tranquilizer. It's a chair that looks a little bit like an electric chair. The patient was confined in this apparatus, sometimes with cold water applied to his or her head, for some hours at a time, and Rush announces in a letter that he's invented this new contraption and dubbed it the tranquilizer.
Los procedimientos a menudo letales de Rush se detallaron en su manual de 1812, que siguió siendo la fuente autorizada de la psiquiatría durante 70 años. Era tan venerado que en 1965 a Rush lo consagraron como el padre de la psiquiatría americana en el sello de la Asociación Psiquiátrica Americana. A fines del siglo XIX, los crecientes fracasos de la psiquiatría en curar la locura amenazaban sus ganancias financieras, obligándolos a inventar nuevos modelos médicos.
The cures promised when it was delivered. So by the 1860s and 70s, a growing mood of pessimism was covering Europe and North America, that effectively the new institutions were ever growing in size, but not growing in their effectiveness.
El siglo XX trajo más modelos médicos. El psiquiatra americano Henry Cotton mutilaba a sus pacientes quitándoles partes del cuerpo y declaró que este era un gran avance para tratar enfermedades mentales.
The earliest target was the teeth and then the tonsils and the sinuses, but when patients didn't get better, the enthusiasts for this treatment then started to move down the body and to say, well, obviously patients have swallowed bacteria in their saliva, so stomachs need to go, spleens need to go, colons need to go.
Al aumentar la indignación del público por la tortura y mutilación de pacientes, los psiquiatras inventaron nuevos métodos, cada uno aclamado como cura milagrosa. Pero cada uno no resultó ser más eficaz ni menos brutal que el anterior.
This is a history of psychiatry, more or less, to damage the patient. I mean, this is a version of the original model, which was to chain them like animals.
If you're doing it to somebody because you insist that they have to change, and you're going to do that by turning the screws, you might say, whether it's with medication, restraint, whatever, that's torture. And a huge part of what psychiatry has done really comes down to torture.
Al avanzar el siglo XX, la psiquiatría continuó buscando legitimidad al transformarse en disciplina médica. Pero solo lograron crear formas más eficientes para infligir tortura mental y física y la muerte. Un legado que ha continuado hasta la psiquiatría moderna con su modelo médico más redituable hasta ahora, la drogadicción masiva de millones de personas. Pero para lograrlo, los psiquiatras primero tenían que destrozar una de las creencias más preciadas de la humanidad, decretando que la gente no era lo que pensaba que era. Universidad de Leipzig, Alemania, 1879. El profesor Wilhelm Wundt experimenta con los sentidos humanos. Wundt declara que los pensamientos, personalidad y comportamiento del hombre no son más que reacciones químicas del cerebro.
Wundt became frustrated with his inability to change behavior because he was dealing with the original, psychology. That's the psyche, that's the soul. He created a new science, which was based on man being an animal without a soul, to be trained, not to be a thinker, but to be trained.
Estudiantes de todo el mundo se reunieron para estudiar la nueva definición del hombre por Wundt como un organismo sin alma. El espíritu de la época lo resumió el filósofo alemán Friedrich Nietzsche.
Gott ist tot. Gott bleibt tot. Wir haben ihn umgebracht.
Siguiendo la teoría de Wundt, el ruso Ivan Pavlov experimentó con animales buscando métodos de modificar el comportamiento.
Pavlov studied in Wilhelm Wundt's laboratory in Leipzig, Germany, in the late 1800s. And he experimented with dogs, with electrodes, and and stimulus response, denying privileges to denying rewards.
And he noticed that when you brought out some food in front of animals, dogs in particular, that they would begin to salivate. So he'd ring the bell at the same time that he brought the food out, and then eventually, instead of bringing the food out, he just rang the bell, and of course the dogs got all excited. He called that a conditioned reflex.
Los primeros sujetos humanos de Pavlov fueron niños. Les perforaba la mejilla para reunir y medir su saliva.
Pavlovian conditioning became one of the major foundations of a lot of behavioral science research in the 20th century.
La idea de que se podía controlar el comportamiento con condicionamiento repetitivo se conocía como conductismo.
The behaviorists believed that all children are animals and can be trained as animals. This was the view of behaviorists. As a matter of fact, John Watson, the most famous of the behaviorists, says that you have to treat human beings or look at human beings the way you would look at the ox you slaughter. See, the behavior is not interested in what's up in your head or your soul because they don't believe there is a soul.
El sucesor de Watson, el psicólogo de Harvard B.F. Skinner, creía que todo comportamiento podía manipularse para adaptarse a cualquier fin que el psicólogo conductista buscase.
Skinner developed what's called operant conditioning, where he was able to demonstrate you can change animal behavior by certain schedules of reinforcement, by giving them rewards at certain times, and then you can teach pigeons to play ping pong, for example, and you can teach rats to run mazes. And you can teach human beings to seek certain economic or societal rewards.
Skinner could actually shape new behavior patterns, and this actually was the sort of thing he quite soon became very famous for.
Quizás su experimento más famoso era la caja de Skinner.
He was designing a Skinner box, which is something like a big playpen, but everything in it's controlled. The temperature's controlled, the light's controlled, and so on. And the idea is then you present children with certain stimuli that you want them to learn to react to.
Durante casi un año, Skinner aisló a su hija en una caja, similar a las que se construyen para las ratas.
The child was stimulated and had to respond in a certain way, like a chicken or a rat in a cage, because they firmly believe that children are animals. If you believe, though, that a child is a human being, you can't train him like a rat.
Hoy, el Instituto Nacional de Salud Mental de Estados Unidos paga casi $40 millones al año del dinero de los contribuyentes para la investigación de psicología conductista. Un total de $19,000 millones desde 1948. Con esos fondos, los psiquiatras aplican las mismas técnicas de condicionamiento desarrolladas por Pavlov, Watson y Skinner. Un buen ejemplo, un centro de detención juvenil donde se conecta a los niños a baterías de 270 voltios y se les dan choques en la llamada terapia de aversión.
Antoine was having a number of problems because he was up at a center that was shocking him every time he did anything. There was a button on a little, almost like a TV remote, that would be used and pushed.
They will get an additional shock for trying to remove the electrode. So they're expected to sit there and let this electricity pass through their skin without trying to remove it. If they yell in anticipation of the shock, they will shock the student an additional time for yell.
The cost to send a student to Judge Rottenberg from New York is about $214,000 per student. These students are tortured. They're given this electric shock therapy for no other reason but to inflict pain.
Otras técnicas incluyen el administrar electrochoques para tratar el desvío sexual, el lanzar fuertes impulsos magnéticos al cráneo para interrumpir la actividad cerebral y el disparar alto voltaje a través de electrodos implantados quirúrgicamente para reprimir el comportamiento problemático, lo que cuesta hasta $100,000 por paciente. Y mientras esta ciencia sin alma llevó a técnicas de modificación del comportamiento que aún generan miles de millones de dólares en investigación y tratamientos, también cimentó otro movimiento psiquiátrico que causaría la muerte de millones de personas.
January 1945. As World War II comes to a close, the full horror of Hitler's final solution is exposed. with grotesque killing factories, unparalleled in human history. Mass graves filled with corpses of men, women, and children.